More and more people are depressed. More and more people are feeling like life is not as good as it should be. They may see dragons, devils, things that scare them.
Some things are on the positive side and some things are on the negative side.
Right.
How would you explain?
They say when you do DMT or ayahuasca, it gets to the point you're asking ayahuasca, tell me what to do. Our minds are capable of going to places on their own without anything. So psychedelics may be just the first step, and I can't use her name, but she said, this is what is coming, Peter, and it's going to stay.
Hey Peter, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking out time. How are you today? How was your day?
My day was great. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm really excited about today because I don't have knowledge about it. I don't know many things about it. You can call me naive, but then I'm still learning. So it's going to be a great learning podcast for me and my audience. And since I think most of the people are going to be from India, and then of course we would have people who follows you, they would also be watching it. So we would have a great understanding of what you do. And yeah, so it's going to be great.
You want to learn a little bit more about psychedelics, or you want to learn a little bit more about just...
Psychedelics, yes.
Psychedelics,
So it's going to be about psychedelics.
Okay, well, I do have some experience with psychedelics.
Yeah, so how did you get into it? You have a company in Bahamas.
Yes.
So just let's get to know about it a little.
Okay, so the company in Bahamas is basically was set up to treat people that have severe addictions. Mm-hmm. So if you're really addicted to heroin, cocaine, opiates in general, as you can imagine, it's very difficult to get off those drugs. And we use psychedelics to treat those people that are addicted. And we have full approval from the government there to use these psychedelics. In general, in most countries, they're illegal.
Right.
They're making progress in some other countries. There are clinical trials going on right now in the UK for one of the drugs that we use. But basically, that's it. And we're really excited. We're going to open up our first clinic there. It's taken us 2 years to get the approvals, but we're going to open up our first clinic there probably in the next 6 months, as soon as we can raise some funds and get a location and whatnot and get things going.
So what was the idea behind it? How did you think of getting into it?
Well, my history is a little bit in human services and drug addiction therapy. And really, to be really honest, there really isn't many drugs that do justice to anybody that has an addiction problem. In other words, what I'm saying is most of the things that Big Pharma has created for us really don't help addicts. They continue to struggle, and most people continue to be addicted, even though they're being treated and they get counseling. Whereas psychedelics has, in a lot of cases, a very great success rate. For instance, there was a study done, clinical trials done in the United States. They did, during their clinical trials, they took veterans that basically were suffering from severe PTSD for the things that they've seen. And they gave them MDMA treatment. 75% of the people that got this MDMA treatment went off the PTSD scale completely. In other words, if they were to walk in after they did the treatment and be assessed by a psychologist, the psychologist would say they're off the spectrum of PTSD or post-traumatic stress. So there's not a drug around that would be able to claim that success. And psychedelics with respect to heroin addiction and other addictions, there's a substance called iboga or ibogaine that completely detoxes people that are on heroin. Same kind of results. You're going to get probably somewhere between 65 and 75% of the people that do ibogaine treatment will have successful treatment afterwards. And that's why we're in it.
So psychedelics, if you have to just break it down and make it understand to a teen who is going to get to learn about these things, so how would you explain that? And how would you explain the bad side of it and a good side of it?
Right.
Because I understand that everything all the drugs or anything lies on a scale where it's on, some things are on the positive side and some things are on the negative side.
Right.
So if you have to break down and tell a teenage kid who's going to get into it, what would you tell him or her, or how would you explain, or them?
It depends on if you're talking purely psychedelics. So you're talking about,
just
say,
psychedelics.
mushrooms, which is a common name. I'm just going to use the names that people might use if they were going off to a party.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do mushrooms.
Yeah.
We're going to do ecstasy. We're going to do, well, in some cases, they might do
LSD?
LSD, sure. LSD is another one that you might do. So those types of drugs will give you an hallucination. In other words, it's going to take charge of your mind a little bit. And you're going to see things, and your mind you won't be able to stop from seeing those things.
What happens in the mind? Like, is it the chemicals, that the serotonin that does it, or what happens?
In some cases, yeah, it's a serotonin that it will basically increase your serotonin levels. Ecstasy, that's what it does. It increases your serotonin levels inside to make you feel good. But when it comes to the actual psychedelics, the bad part about it is that you're not necessarily going to have a good trip. You use that term tripping, right?
Yeah. The casual term.
When you take a psychedelic, you may get a good trip, you may not. It depends on how stable the person is when they go to take it. So if they're feeling really uneasy about their own life and whatnot, and they're a paranoid person to begin with, they may see some things they may see images, they may see dragons, devils, things that scare them.
Ooh,
and they may have to work through that. And there's no way of really getting out of that state once you've taken it. You've got to just walk through it. That being said, though the more you do psychedelics, the more you learn about it, the more you're educated about it, you can control those, you can control how you feel when you're doing the psychedelics. In other words, if you go into it with a fresh mind and you're basically feeling good about yourself, the chances are, I mean, I'm not a chemist and I don't know that much about it. The chances are you're going to have a pretty good trip. That being said, if I could talk about the medical component just for a second, that is why when you use psychedelics to treat people that have addiction, for instance, or they have PTSD, you have a trained counselor that is with you during the whole experience. So they're walking you through. So when you see these images, they can talk to you. Usually you're lying on a bed, often blindfolded, and you're being taped, and the counselors will be on each side of you and walking you through. So if you're saying something like, I'm seeing my mother now, and it's not a good, it's not a good sight, she's injured, whatever it is, they'll have a way of walking you through that. So this is why I caution people from trying to take psychedelics for treatment purposes by themselves. Don't just go out and buy mushrooms and try to treat yourself for PTSD. It really should be done with a professional, somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah. So if we understand that, how would somebody start the drugs? It can be anything. So if we talk about psychedelics, say, there could be 3 reasons, or maybe 2, what I can think of right now, why when somebody, a teenager or anybody, not just a teenager or anybody, like I haven't tried anything, so it could be me too.
Right.
So somebody who hasn't tried, could be 2 reasons. First is influence. Second is influence, and then if somebody is going through something. Most of the people try things when they are not aware of it, and then they're like, okay, maybe they do it, I should also try that. So what could go wrong in that case? If I'm already going through a tough phase of my life, what could go wrong if I use it?
Well, like I said, you may have a bad trip, and the thing is, you have to separate. Are you taking the drug, for lack of a better word, are you taking the drug because you want to make yourself feel better?
Okay.
Because people.
So will it make me feel better if I use it?
Well,
if I'm going through
psychedelic, no, but cocaine, yes. I mean, that's why a lot of people do cocaine, is because the chances of you feeling better than you do right now when you take cocaine is really good. So that's why people get addicted to cocaine, is they feel better. Psychedelics are a little bit different because you're going to have either one of two experiences. You're going to have an experience that's inside yourself, for lack of a better. So you're going to be thinking about you and yourself inside, like what is wrong with me, what's right with me, what am I experiencing, right? And am I feeling good about myself? Am I seeing, images or things that maybe remind me of my family? Am I going to see images of my, friend that passed away? Things like that. You can feel from inside. Psychedelics also, certain psychedelics, will make you feel outside. In other words, people that are trained at ayahuasca is one of them.
Yeah.
DMT is the molecule. They say, I've never done DMT. They say when you do DMT or ayahuasca, it gets to the point where you're asking the DMT, you're asking ayahuasca, tell me what to do.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
It's kind of like an out of body experience. At least this is what, anecdotally people will say after their experience with ayahuasca. And they'll train themselves to say, tell me where to go. Where should I go in my life? We have a major group of high-powered executives in the United States that are using ayahuasca or DMT to flourish their career, to make them sharper and better executives and know themselves better. And they're going through these experiences right now.
Who are those people?
Well, I mean, I do know one.
No, the people who have openly talked about it.
I would have to go on Google.
Joe Rogan has talked about it. He has tried a few things.
He's tried a few things, yes.
Ayahuasca and all those things.
Yeah, so you'd have to, this is just what I've heard from other people that, in fact, I was approached one time by a woman that maybe wanted to invest in the company, that wanted to take a branch of the company, and she was an executive, to start this up. And I can't use her name, but she said, this is what is coming, Peter. This is what's coming with executives. And it's going to stay because they are really purifying sort of an approach in their own head of, they kind of knew what they wanted to do. Obviously, they're successful executives, but now they want to get the edge and they want to get even better. And they're using psychedelics to do that, to make their mind sharper. In fact, have you not heard the story of, a lot of people think that when they look at the evolutionary chain of what happened to us as human beings, there's periods of time where they know that human beings advanced quicker than they thought they were possible to advance. And they've looked at these cultures and they've studied these cultures and they've said to themselves, how could this happen? Because we had this period of time, the anthropologists say, period of time where nothing really happened. And all of a sudden, these people advanced to the point where they're using tools and things like that. And now they think that they may have eaten psychedelics mushrooms.
Could be.
And they developed their mind as a result of that. So we really are, we're on the verge of something here that I almost feel like we've been stunted, we've been held down.
Yeah.
Right? And we've been held down a little bit by just traditional means. Let's be it safe. Let's get clinical trials going for all these medications, and let's make sure that we're safe. But at the same time, you have to look at it. Maybe we've stunted ourselves.
Yeah.
Maybe we would have advanced even farther had psychedelics been used through our culture right now. So there's that aspect of it. I don't know why we're going.
Yeah, so that's how the billion-dollar companies will keep making money if these things don't come, right? And same. So I went to southern part of India, where there is not much influence of the Western medicines, right? So we have Ayurveda, if you've heard of it.
No,
Ayurveda, Ayurvedic medicines. That is also made of spices and herbs and So that's like India has been consuming that for thousands of years, and ancient medicines are made from that. So when we went to the southern part of India, there we met people who owned the spice gardens, and they would make different things out of it, different medicines. So like I would have acne on my face, my scalp, because my scalp, just like people have acne on their faces because of the oily face, oily skin, I would have acne on my head, on my scalp. That was because my scalp was too oily. And I had been having the Western medicines, and that would fix it, but temporarily. When I would stop, it would still keep coming up. Then we went to South India, and then we brought this oil, and I used it for a few, maybe couple of months, and gone. The problem was fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then when I was talking to those people, they shared that most of the doctors go either to West or the northern part of India, because that's where there's a huge influence of Western medicines. But here, no, we don't need doctors.
Well, you know, I mean, it's interesting that why would we be surprised about that? I mean, most of the drugs that the drug companies make come from a plant base of some kind, and they manipulate the molecules so that they can patent it. So these medicines, I mean, the First Nations here have all kinds of medicines, plant medicines they've used over the years, because there was no pharmacy when they were here. Yeah. So, over centuries, they developed different plants that would be good for headaches, good for things. Yeah. And but it's interesting that why are most people surprised by that? Why are they surprised? And this is where we've been sort of taught through this whole tradition of going off to the doctor to get the medicine, and that's the only way. And you get a lot of resistance from people. No, I don't want to take that because it's not from a doctor. Yeah. There is some truth in that, because there's clinical trials that have gone in to, getting that drug. Yeah. But at the same time, if you look at any clinical trial, there's lots of problems with that actual drug. They're not perfect. All you have to do is watch a commercial on TV about a drug, and they say, you're gonna have diarrhea, you're gonna have headaches, you're gonna have this. Don't take it if you're pregnant. Blah 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 blah. So they're not perfect. Yeah. So I think these plant medicines. What I wanted to sort of make the point is that we should be more open to just accepting the fact that maybe something would work for me, like an oil instead of a medication. Right. For your acne, because it took centuries for this to be passed down, and it works. Yeah. But it's hard for you to get a lot of the people that are from Western society to accept that, right? Look at all, it's very hard for people to do that.
Just like they took years to accept yoga. Initially, people would laugh at it. Hey, what are you doing? What is that? All of that.
Right.
But when all the scientific researchers came out, they said, wow, it does wonders. Right. Now everybody's following, and I'm doing namaste.
Well, it's what happens to your body and your brain at the same time. Yoga is like a medication or a meditation and an exercise all at once.
Exactly.
Right?
And imagine you have been practicing that for thousands of years.
Exactly.
Whew. Yeah. So sorry.
It's interesting. I think if I was going to make any message, is that open your mind to looking at some of these things, right? Don't be afraid just to read a little bit. Yeah. Google psychedelics. Google, medical purposes for these things, and just take it for yourself. I mean, and look at it with a grain of salt for everything. I'm not saying you should rush out and take psychedelics for anything, but I think that plant-based medicines, for the most part, there's a lot of history behind those, a lot more than Western medicine has.
Absolutely.
And with respect to what I want to do, we've discovered, or when I say we, society has discovered over the years, all of the researchers that have gone basically into psychedelics from for the last, the 20s. And if you read that information and you look at it closely, what it's capable of doing is pretty miraculous. Absolutely. If you can take somebody and get them off heroin, you can get them back into society, productive. All you have to do is go to any big city in North America, and there's a street with people living on it, with mostly drug addicts.
Right.
And I'm not saying most of those people have mental health difficulties. I'm not saying you're going to be able to give these guys a pill, but you'll be able to go down there and have a start with people. And you know what the funny thing is? If you go down a Hastings Street, where we are right now, and you come up to people and say, have you ever heard of Ibogaine? And most of them will say yes. But they'll say, I can't afford to take it. So they know more than the average person does about what's out there for drug addiction. And they're the ones that are addicted. So I just encourage people to open their mind up. Don't run out and take it, but just look at it, because this is where we're going. And I think it's going to change the way medicine is developed in North America and the world in the future. It's going to take a few years, but it's going to change things.
So that brings me, we do need right companies who are bringing the awareness, just like what you are trying to do. So if you have to make me understand, how is your business going to work and how will it provide the services to people, what would that be?
Well, we're going to start with basically with assisting persons that can afford the treatment.
So will it be clinics or what?
With clinics, yeah.
Okay.
So
you'll have your own. You will have your own clinics.
Yes, we'll have hopefully globally a lot of clinics. We're going to open up as many as we possibly can, and we'll use the platform that we used in Bahamas to go into other jurisdictions that will allow psychedelics. Cyprus is one. New Zealand. There's other countries that will allow you to go in. So we want to develop this, but we also want to have it in the mind that we also want to provide an opportunity for people to research, because we can have researchers come in. Ibogaine apparently does some fantastic things for Parkinson's and other dementia. So there's other uses other than drug addiction. So we want to be able to provide an opportunity for people to come to the Bahamas or come to Cyprus, wherever we're located, and we'll have a research end of things there. The other thing is that mental health for anybody is extremely important, and you probably notice even with your friends and family that more and more people are having difficulty getting by. More and more people are depressed. More and more people are feeling like life is not as good as it should be, and that's a form of mental health. And that, I've noticed that increasing. And so just regular mental health for the person that is getting by, I see, and I want to be part of it, of having resorts or retreats, which are already there, but retreats and whatnot that the average person can go. What I envision is if you take off and go to a resort in Mexico or the Bahamas or Hawaii, you're at the Four Seasons, you're at a hotel, and you're enjoying yourself with your family, that you might have an opportunity to do some psychedelics there for mental health purposes, right? And you come back refreshed mentally, not just go and sit in the pool, but you actually have a mind-developing experience that assists you. And then I can see clubs, I can see things that happen as a result of that, where you maybe are buying memberships in that, so you keep your connections with the people. So you meet people in these places and you maintain your connection. Because a big part of the reason people are not as healthy mentally is because we've broken off a lot of the relationships. A lot of the people, there isn't as much community as there used to be.
It's a mess in the West. It's a mess in the West.
It's funny because if you look at if you got different cultures, right? Like I've seen you with your friends. You eat lunch together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's our culture.
When have you seen a bunch of Canadian people get together and eat lunch together and share lunch? Do you know what I mean? Like it rarely happens. It happens on special occasions.
Yeah.
Not on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That's a form of community and keeping relationships going. And I think we're too isolated here. If you live in an apartment building, you don't even know the guy that lives next door.
I know.
Right?
I've seen that.
So we are fragmented from that. So what I'm saying is that there are communities started in places like Costa Rica where you're buying a plot of land and building a house. And you want to buy a plot of land there because the guy next door is into psychedelics and he's into this culture. And you want to be with people that are also of like mind. And that's happening all over Costa Rica right now. So we're going to see in countries like that Costa Rica is not necessarily legal, but they bat a blind eye. There's a lot of ceremonial, ayahuasca and whatnot, and iboga going on and psilocybin in Costa Rica. So that's kind of, our future is kind of three-pronged. First of all, you try to get something going that will medically help people so that there's not as many deaths and society is a lot better for it. We spend billions and billions of dollars on people that are drug addicted, right? I mean, if you look at the hospital here, St. Paul's Hospital, it's just a revolving door of drug addicts being brought in by an ambulance and then released 3 hours later, only be brought back again. And all of that ICU time is extremely expensive, and it's taxpayers are paying for it. So there's that aspect, let alone just the human, capacity, but there's also the financial capacity. We all have to pay for that, and we should be looking at ways to treat people first of all, for them, because we're human beings and we care about other human beings, but also because our lifestyles are compromised because of the tax burden that we have trying to keep these things going. So then there's that aspect of it, right? That's for the people that really have severe mental health. But just the average person that should be able to go to a resort or go to a retreat and have a relaxing time and have a mind-enhancing experience that helps them with their PTSD, little bits. Everybody's got some mental health. Everybody has a little bit of mental health.
Can PTSD be fixed with this? And if yes, how much can it be fixed?
Well, like I said, the PTSD with MDMA, which is ecstasy, they had a 75% success rate on getting the person off the PTSD scale. So they went in, they were veterans of a war of some kind, Iraq, Vietnam, whatever it was. They came out of there, they saw a lot of awful things. They can't sleep, they can't maintain a relationship. They're really messed up. They do the treatment, and 75% of them are off the PTSD scale. So they don't have post-traumatic stress anymore. But this goes for nurses, police officers, firemen, anybody in these, they see ugly things every day.
Absolutely.
They see people that, have been hurt, and they go home and they dream about it, and they need things like this, right? And there's no cure for this type of, there's no medication that you can really take from your doctor. There's a lot of mental, you can do counseling, it does a lot. Counseling does a lot. But when you question about PTSD, yes, psychedelics, MDMA can help. Psilocybin can help as well. As we do more trials with these things, we find even more things that are happening within the field where they're combining different psychedelics together. And they're microdosing as a post-treatment with different psychedelics. So it's got a long way to go, and it's going to take a long time, because it's going to take a long time for governments to absorb it into their system.
Do they want to?
I think the governments really do want to, but if you look at the United States, the billions of dollars that go into big pharma, right?
Yeah.
So
maybe they want the billions of dollars to go to big pharma.
Exactly. Well, a big pharma is going to have lobbyists that go to the politicians and say, not in my backyard kind of thing, right? So there is ways around that, though. I mean, in my mind, you're not going to attack big pharma. There's too much money. But you can make a place for big pharma to be. In other words, they could change the way they bring these things into the system. And it could be that big pharma, for instance, they might say that you can be in charge of the administration of this. In other words, they have to go through you. You can have the license to administer the psychedelics. But you're not going to be able to get a plant-based patent for it. But you can have they're going to have to follow your protocols in order to do it. In other words, we're not going to release it to the doctors unless they pay you for the protocols on how to administer it. That's how big pharma can get into it. And so it's a matter of doing that type of thing, thinking smart around this stuff, because if you come up against the big pharma trying to say, hey, I want to take this plant-based medicine through clinical trials and I'll spend $150 million, they're going to spend $150 million trying to stop you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they don't want that. Because all the drugs that they're selling you that don't work for depression are going to be off the shelf now. Right?
What? Exactly. I want to keep on. I have tons of questions. So, what I've understood now is psychedelics work as if you take it in a right way, it works as a support system for your head, for your mind, right? So say if you're not able to manage your emotions or manage your mental health, it will help you manage it.
Take it in the right context, yes. It's going to open up your mind to things that will allow you to think about things in a different way.
Yeah. So what I understand is that when you're depressed, your mind is not what my understanding is. I am not sure of the facts. So your brain is not able to release serotonin. Is it right?
Yeah, you're gonna have less serotonin going into your system if you're depressed. Yes.
So psychedelics will help it release it more and help you.
Yes. So you're going to get your brain into a state that you feel better. In other words, if someone came to a counselor, for instance, and they'd been working with a psychologist for a long time because maybe there was a death in their family, they couldn't get over it, right? So we all have to get up and go to work every day, right? But to think about that and to be depressed about that every day, they'd be in bed all day. So this is a very simplistic way of describing what happens in counseling. Your brain, as a natural reaction, is going to push that down so you don't think about it all the time. So you can go to work and feed yourself, right? So what a psychedelic is going to do, for instance, something like MDMA or even psilocybin, it's going to put some serotonins in your brain to allow you to get to that space and talk about it. And you're going to talk about it like, hey, I just ordered a pizza. Yeah, I'm okay with my dad dying. Do you know what I mean? Whereas you couldn't even go there before. So it allows you to talk about the things that you push down. And if you're with a counselor and this is happening, you'll be able to work through things during that period of time when you're under the influence. And then you come out of the influence, you're still going to have that, still have that border. It's still going to be recessed. But each time you do that, they say, and at least in the clinical trials, if you do this 3 times with the MDMA from MAPS with somebody, by that time the counselors have got you to, and every time they do it, your level raises a bit to the point where now you can talk about that awful thing that happened to you, a death or whatever, and that's why you're off the PTSD scale. So that's the key, right? It's our natural reaction is that if something is so horrible in our brain that we're going to be in bed or hurting ourselves as a result of trying to deal with it, the natural reaction is to push that down. Push it down so you don't have to think about it all the time. Psychedelics can help bring that out so you can talk about it. Make sense?
A lot of sense, yes. Yeah, totally. I mean, it is bringing a lot of questions in my head. And since I'm understanding it side by side, and I forgot.
So, okay, let me ask you a question.
Please.
So, India
Yeah.
obviously has psychedelics.
Illegally, yes.
Yes, illegal.
I mean, they're grown there in the northern part, yes. They do, yeah. So it's there.
Right.
They're grown
And
there.
there's likely plant-based medicines that give you an
Absolutely.
experience like you talked about before,
Yeah.
even that is used.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at places like, I think it's,
Mountains are Himachal.
I'm trying to think. Oh, it'll come to me. Anyway, there are different plants that will give you experiences. Novocaine comes from this one plant, right? And they make teas out of it. Some cultures will make teas out of it. And I remember when I was traveling, I took this tea, and I felt numb. The back of my throat and whatnot felt numb. When I got home, I talked to my doctor friend about it. He goes, well, that's what they use Novocaine for. So they use that plant to freeze when you're having a dental surgery.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
But and I think it was the drug is called Novocaine, and it's from that plant. So even when you say to me, "Oh, we have spices and things that we use for remedies," that's plant medicine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's probably in India there's years and years of spices. So you could probably, if you really digged, and looked at some of these people that are experts on it, you could probably go to them and say, "What can I do? I'm not feeling good about myself. Have you got something I could take?" They probably have something.
Yeah.
You've never run into that before?
Not really, because it's not really talked, like drugs and alcohol is not really talked about and looked
Right.
down upon. So, not really. But then, yes, quite recently, cannabis has been quite popular. A lot of people from alcohol, earlier it used to be alcohol, but they are moving to cannabis. A lot of people consume that.
Mm-hmm.
It's becoming a trend, I guess. So, yeah, I really haven't heard about it. But I've heard about mushrooms, magic mushrooms.
Right.
So if we have to explain all these, like LSD, can we briefly explain all of these? Like how do they work or what happens?
Yeah, so basically alcohol and marijuana are in the slow your central nervous
Right.
system down.
Right.
You get mellow, right?
Yeah.
And then,
How, I mean, makes you less conscious.
well, it's going to make you conscious, but it's going to make you conscious maybe about different things. But you're gonna your central nervous system is kind of slowed down a bit.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're not, perceiving things, but you might, spend a lot of time just looking at one thing as opposed to you might spend 10 minutes looking at a painting, which is otherwise you might spend 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Because your metabolism, your central nervous system is slowed down and you're sort of getting into it, as they may put it. And then there's the whole, these are not psychedelics, although in some cases cannabis can create a little bit of a dream state experience if you take enough of it. But for the most part, no, you're not going to get any illusions or, hallucinations. Then you got, things like uppers, speed, things like that are going to speed up your metabolism. Cocaine does that a little bit as well. So those things are going to make you feel good, lots of energy, right? So what can I take? And, that's why people will come out, they're maybe a bit depressed, and they get addicted to Coke because they've had a tough week, and they're out at the club, and somebody gives them a line of Coke, and all of a sudden they're dancing, and, they're the life of the party, and they like that experience.
Yeah, that
and
attention.
so it's those are probably the most addictive drugs because of the feeling it gives you when you're out, and you feel like a different person. Not that you don't get that from alcohol, but alcohol really is a depressant, right? So, that's why you wake up the next morning after you've had too much drink and you go, you're really down on yourself. You're depressed because the alcohol is basically doing that to you.
Yeah. Never drinking again.
But then you've got the psychedelics, which are more of a mystical kind of hallucinogenic experience that's either in body, out of body.
Yeah.
And you might be doing that for whatever reason. I mean, you might be doing that just for sheer experimentation and joy, and you like the way you're feeling because you're able to think about things in a different way.
Okay.
But that's basically the spectrum. I mean, there's all kinds of offshoots to that, and we're still learning more and more about the medical aspects of taking psychedelics. But that's basically the three groups of people that would be taking it for recreational purposes. And, whatever we do with that, I don't think that you asked me a question earlier, what advice do I give to a teenager?
Mm-hmm.
You're likely not going to get addicted
That's what my question was going to
to
be.
a psychedelic.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to ask. Say if a person starts taking psychedelics because they are depressed or something, or anybody, they start taking it. Do you think their mind will be dependent on it, on consuming it more when they start feeling fine?
No, that's basically not what I've read. Again, I'm not a doctor.
Will I be able to leave it once
For the most part, addiction doesn't come along with psychedelics. Now, there are some people that take too much ecstasy, and they get depletion of certain things in their systems, and they want to take it to restabilize themselves. But that's the only thing that's remotely. For the most part, having a psychedelic experience is not something that you crave. Again, right? You want it because you want to experience things, but there's no really that harsh effects to actually taking psychedelics, taking LSD and having an experience. Other than the experience itself, whether it be a good trip or a bad trip, But the only thing that you're going to get out of that experience, you're not going to be sitting there going, I have to have LSD.
Or maybe dependence in the sense that, say, if I am depressed, if something is happening, so to get out of that situation every time, will I need it? Say, if I take it and I start feeling fine, and for some time I don't, and then after a period of time, will I take it again? Would I want to have an escape from my life, to get out of that zone?
Psychedelics, no, but that's where alcohol abuse comes in, right?
Okay.
Usually people will turn to alcohol, a drug like alcohol, to help them with depression. Because for the period of time that they are high on the alcohol, they feel good. And it gets them through a period of several hours of not being depressed.
Yeah.
And that's why you get such a heavy addiction.
Yeah.
Because they get through a few hours of maybe their work or their job, starts to come on again, and then they start to drink, and it goes away. So marijuana, to a certain extent, maybe would give you a little bit of that, but alcohol is really the killer when it comes to depression and taking something to solve the depression.
That's how Friday nights and Saturday nights have been made, to get to have an escape from the life.
It's really quite a destructive drug that is legal here. Do you know what I mean?
And it's worse. And then kills your brain cells as well.
Kills your brain cells. It's really hard on your organs, your liver, your kidneys. Whereas a lot of these other drugs are not that hard on your system. And it is interesting that, again, look at the medical system, how much we spend on taking care of people, especially in a place like Canada where the medical is free. Just think of all the illnesses that we're paying for as taxpayers for someone that is severely addicted to alcohol. Their bodies come apart.
Do you think psychedelics is also taken for creative activities or by the creators or artists to help them? Like you talked about CEOs.
Yep.
How about the artists?
Absolutely. You're going to put your mind into a space where you're able to think about things that you could not think about had you not been under the influence, say, of LSD. It's going to take you on an experience. You're going to be thinking about things that you never thought about before, that you're burying yourself in things that are just not possible unless I shouldn't say that. I want to give you a little story. I lived with a medical doctor for a while. He just got back to Canada. He traveled the world to all these places. And it was interesting because I was about maybe 1.5 years into psychedelics. I had worked with people before, but I was in the learning curve of learning about psychedelics. So this medical doctor quit his practice here in Canada, decided to travel around and travel to all these places where they were using psychedelics. And I said, well, explain to me what's going on. And when he said this, honestly, I thought he was nuts. I felt like saying, are you really a doctor? Because I thought it was so crazy what he said. And then I started thinking about it after I'd learned a little bit more about psychedelics, and it makes sense. So what he told me is in a village in Peru where they practice ayahuasca, right? So they're practicing with this as part of an overall mental health for the village. But he said this village had got to the point where a lot of people in the village could put themselves in this experience without any ayahuasca.
Oh.
So our minds are capable. This is what I thought. I thought he was nuts. But then I thought about, hey, why not? Our minds are capable of going to places on their own without anything. Right? So psychedelics may be just the first step.
Very true.
Right?
Yeah.
Where we can actually do this on our own.
Psychedelics ayahuasca is also used for spiritual practices as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably its main core. It's kind of like iboga. Iboga is something that we use, and iboga, it's called ibogaine, the form that we have it. But iboga is from a plant in Africa, and pygmies have used it for 2,000 years. And they make a tea out of the bark of this plant, this bush, They give it to the whole village, including the dogs in the village. And when you ask them, why do you give it to the dogs? They say, well, they protect our village better. If they, so the whole,
Interesting.
all you have to do is Google, Iboga ceremonies in Africa, and you'll see these. You can come up with YouTube's these videos. It's quite interesting, and these are very, very healthy people, and the mental health of these people is top, right? So it's something that is a spiritual thing that they do, though. Mind, spirit, and body.
Right.
We've had some dealings with paths crossing with our business and what he's doing. But we're talking about Lamar Odom, who is an ex-NBA star. It's very documented, his struggle with addiction. He's arrived at a hospital in LA a couple of times, DOA, dead on arrival, that they got him going again because of addiction.
Oh.
And he tried everything. And then he did have an ibogaine experience. So I believe it was a clinic in Mexico. There's actually a film about him doing it in Mexico, I believe. And I believe the producer was a guy by the name of Zappi. So this is an interesting, if you listen to his testimonials about how this helped him, basically, I mean, I don't want to speak for him, but he probably would tell you, I would have been dead without this because it was so hard to get off the drugs. And there are many stars.
Like, tell me.
And, well, I mean, because I've been associated with a couple of ibogaine clinics, right? And this is unfortunate. I can't spill the beans, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it is a common occurrence for very high-powered, well, I say high-powered, but influential actors and sports figures that want to maintain their profile, that they will contact clinics and rent the clinic for 3 weeks to a month, and they're the only person there. So the clinic normally would take 12 people or 8 people at a time. They basically, you sign paperwork that basically say non-disclosure, that you're not going to, tell people that this person's there. So I know, because I was associated with the clinics, some of these people, they're unbelievably high-powered people in our society, and they've been successful in treating their addiction with psychedelics.
Yeah.
So I guess the thing that you want to keep in mind is the people with influence and the people with money, they already know about this stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right? It's the common person that is just going to work every day, and they don't have $100,000 or $50,000 to go get a treatment. And they don't know anybody that would even, they wouldn't know who to talk to get it. But when you've got a circle of people working with a sports figure or a movie star, they've got an entourage around them that are there to take care of them. And, what comes to mind for me is, and I'm not saying this would help, but Michael J. Fox, right? If ibogaine, the substance that we're using, is supposed to be somewhat beneficial for people that have Parkinson's. Now, there's no studies that I've read. I've seen some things on the internet of people that have taken ibogaine when they have Parkinson's, dementia, and it has helped. So, but if you look at someone like Michael J. Fox, he's probably tried, or the people have got him whatever he possibly can. I mean, if you were in that state, what are you going to do? You're going to go to wherever it's legal,
Right.
so you don't get into trouble or whatever, but you're going to try anything that's basically ethical and safe to do to help yourself. And I don't want to be the person that restricts that ability, and that's why we fought, or not fought, but put all this energy into getting a legal place to treat people with psychedelics.
Yeah.
And we hope it's going to be a start of something that blossoms.
Certainly, success, money, and fame is difficult to manage. Difficult to handle, right?
Well, I mean, it's a whole different world. I mean, we don't we can't even imagine.
Yeah. We are on a different rat race.
Exactly.
All right. So coming down to your business
Yes.
again. So how it's going to work is you're going to have clinics, and then how will it all work? I just want to understand, dive more into it. How will
Okay.
your business work?
Okay, so if you just look at it on a treatment, I'm just going to give you a scenario, right?
Okay.
So
We'll start from everybody, from people on the streets to people like us,
yeah.
to people who are successful, quite popular, influential.
Right.
Yeah. So let's start from that.
Well, let's use an example, because if I use an example of
yeah.
I get a phone call or somebody approaches the website and says, they leave a message saying, could somebody phone me back about your clinic that you have in the Bahamas? I'm very interested in getting an ibogaine treatment, right? So we would engage that person, get them to fill out all kinds of forms.
Yeah.
To find out, if they're medically and mentally stable enough to take it. But once all that stuff is done, and the person is capable of getting through the treatment.
I'm sorry, one question.
Yeah.
How would you test if a person is capable of it or no?
Well, you're going to do a whole bunch of blood work to see if they are currently have remnants of whatever they're taking still in their system, right? So if they've got a lot of, there's certain chemicals and things that are in your system when you're a drug addict that it's going to be dangerous if you just do a psychedelic to try to treat that, or ibogaine or whatever. And I'm trying to put it into very basic terms. So you want to get the person's blood stable so that you don't give them something that causes a reaction. And in some cases, it can even cause a heart attack if they have cardiac problems. So you're going to also give them EKG, make sure their heart is okay, and they can withstand the treatment because in some cases, psychedelics, particularly ibogaine, will put your heart into arrhythmia if you are prone to that, right? So all the medical stuff goes into that, and then they would come for treatment. And so you're going to do a lot of counseling and pre-work with the person. So you're going to get them stable mentally. You're going to do yoga. You're going to do ice baths, whatever the person really, they would be ticking off a form of what they like to do. If they like going sailing, then you're going to do things like that to get them really relaxed and comfortable in the setting. And then you're going to give them a treatment, whether that we take them to a hospital and treat them or we treat them on site. You're going to give them a treatment that basically involves a doctor and nurses, and you're going to be monitoring them 24 hours a day when they're under having this experience, which can take 2 to 3 days in some cases. And then you're going to do more counseling afterwards and just talking about what happened to them to see whether or not they can open up and whether or not this experience was beneficial to them. But you're also going to do a thing called integration. You're going to do integration work of actually counseling with them to see if they can sort of adapt this experience to their life back home or wherever they're going. You don't want to just send them off, giving them an experience, and all of a sudden they're back in, Idaho going, what happened? You're going to want to set up a community and some sort of an interface of people talking to them they trust and they know. So we're going to help them set that up in their own community, but we're also going to keep contact with them. So that would be one aspect. Another aspect is we're going to recommend that they go to aftercare treatment. So we would have an aftercare place that they would go, and we might do a microdosing of psilocybin or something like that, depending on what would be prescribed to them given their situation from the medical staff that's familiar with psychedelics. So they might spend another 2 to 3 weeks in an aftercare setting and then home. And then we do the same thing. We make sure that they're supported when they're back in their environment at home. To get somebody off heroin, very addicted to heroin, that has really messed up their life that way, and their relationships are unstable, their work's unstable, whatever it is probably going to take at least 90 days.
And how much will all of this cost? From person who, the one you talked about, the first guy, and the second guy who was addicted with heroin.
Yeah, so if you're addicted to heroin and you called and said, okay, I want to go for your treatment, and say our treatment is, for lack of a better, 28 days, a month, approximately. That treatment in a luxury environment, because they're going to be in a very, very high-end residence that we've converted, which will have amenities. It'll be beachfront. It'll have pools. It'll have a chef. It's going to be like it'll be a 5-star experience.
Yeah.
So that is approximately $2,000 a day. So you're looking at around $50,000-$60,000 to do a treatment that's that caliber. The aftercare could be a little bit less, but there are programs out there that are $450,000 for a 4-week stay. So it's super high end. But they're doing, all kinds of extracurricular things. They might be doing brain scan, bringing in special doctors, doing other work other than the psychedelic work to keep to help the person or to assist the person in their mental health or whatever they're struggling from. Yeah. And so ideally though, is what you want to be able to do long term is you want to be able to fund those programs that will allow people that can't afford that treatment another form of treatment. And that's our goal. And you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can have the wealthy guy that comes in and we can have a sponsor program, for instance, and he could sponsor somebody that's not a veteran or somebody that can't afford it. And so we will start a nonprofit as well to do that type of thing. But in order to get everything rolling, we're going to have to, charge those people for a luxury experience. So there's enough money to basically set up other things. That's how we envision our business plan. But yeah, you're looking at, in some cases, you can do an ibogaine treatment in Mexico, probably for $12,000 to $15,000. You might be picked up at the airport and given, 7 to 10 days and then dropped off at the airport, and you're at home going, what happened? You're still going to have an experience, an ibogaine experience. And it most likely will have a physician or a doctor that is with you while you're doing it. But the screening beforehand, the aftercare, the ability to treat the person if something goes wrong is going to be compromised if you don't have all of the people that you need to provide that. Right. If we are doing it next to a hospital, in fact, if we're taking a person and putting them in a hospital bed for an ibogaine treatment, then we got the full staff of the hospital and ICU unit. So if anything goes wrong, it's just like any other procedure here. And that's what we want. And that is going to increase the cost. Plus, Bahamas is more expensive for everything than Mexico.
Yeah.
Does that give you an idea of kind of...
But where have you reached in your process right now? Where are you?
Well, right now we have all the government approvals. We have staffing components in place to go. So we have people... We're going to take over a counseling clinic that is currently in Bahamas that has 8 therapists in it right now that will be trained, and they will become part of our business.
Wonderful.
And we have all the government approvals. So we're inked in the sense of we've gone through National Ethics Committee, which is a government committee that controls things like this that come in if you wanted to start something medical. You're going to have to go through the ethics committee to get that, and we've gone through all that process, and they've given us the paperwork so that we can establish ourselves in the Bahamas. Now it's raising the money that we need to get the first clinic going. We have investors interested right now. We're trying to sort out what we'd really like to have is somebody that would come on as like a founder that would be interested in actually helping us build the business. That would be ideal. I mean, obviously money talks, but our ideal money would be somebody that would come on, take a board seat, and help us build the business.
And how long will you take to get totally acting and get into the business?
We should be able to be profitable, I would say in 6 to 9 months.
Whoa. Good to know that.
Yeah, because our break-even point is probably 4 to 5 patients.
Oh, okay.
We think we can probably move 20 patients a month through one clinic in the Bahamas. And that's going to be working on sort of a 20 or 25 day stay with us. And if we're doing that, what I mentioned before, obviously there's a high cost for properties that we have to purchase or rent and renovate to get them going. And then there's lots of medical staff, nurses, doctors.
Sure. A lot of cost, big cost, expenses.
There's costs to do that. Plus we'll have to lease space in a hospital environment so that we can take people there. So, and Bahamas is a fairly expensive place too.
Yeah. That's a big step. Big.
It's got to happen.
Yeah. And then you need guts to keep getting into things. And I know the entrepreneur in you keeps coming up and he wants to solve problem. That's how the entrepreneurial brain works. They want to keep coming in, keep solving problem.
Well, I think my key is do something that is going to help people.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have much more drive. I have much more drive. If it was just getting money, what are you going to do with money? I mean, yes, everybody goes, I want more money. And then, but yeah, I really want to do something that would allow me to start something that would help people long term and something that will go on after I'm gone and continue to develop. And if it's helping people that, addicts in addiction, mental health, it would be a nice way to retire knowing that is happening. And I started.
Yeah. Helping the community always make you sleep better at night.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess so. I mean,
you'll sleep better, I'm sure. Helping so many people who are going through a lot. Yeah, that's something. All right, Peter. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you very much.
So much to learn, so much still to learn. And it was a great experience for me to have you here.
Well, thank you. You had great questions.
All right. So I think that's going to be it for today.
Okay.
And then I look forward to having more sessions with you where we dive into it and see your entrepreneurial journey and talk about the business part.
I've got lots of experience with that.
I'm keen
this is not my first business.
Yeah, I know that. I'm keen to know about those things as well.
Okay, fantastic.
The entrepreneur, businessman in you.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Thank you very much.
Take care.